Alrighty, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video. Today we're going to react to Saints Row. What happened? What happened to Saints Row, the series? Well, apparently, the company that made Saints Row, Volition, is pretty much out of business because they made this shitty-ass Saints Row game, which I put up in a poll, and if y'all want to see me play it, I'll play it. I really don't want to play it because I've seen a couple of people play this game, and this game is ass, bruh. This game is ass. This is not Saints Row. This is ass. This is some bullshit they just threw together, bro. And I'm happy that they out of business because now we ain't gonna never get nothing back from this IP ever again. The Saints Row IP is officially dead. We will never get nothing from it again, and we never should because this shit is hot garbage. What they did to this franchise is hot garbage. But anyways, so let's get right into this.
Hello and welcome to another gang-banging episode, please cut to the right footage there, of What Happened, the pop culture media show that digs up the dirt on the development histories of video games and movies that have had a rough time of maintaining their empires. And that very accurately describes Saints Row, the 16-year-old free-roaming franchise filled with colorful characters, bouncing bodies, and baseball bats of a particular length and girth. After a number of successful sequels and spin-offs, except for that weird Kinect beat-em-up that was cancelled, it seemed like the adventures of the Third Street Saints had run their course, having gone to alternate dimensions, timelines, hell, and the worst place of all, cyberspace. The franchise's creator, Illinois-based Volition, had wanted to move on, a desire which produced Agents of Mayhem, which was set to be their next big thing. When that didn't become their next big thing, which I may need to talk about in a future episode, it was decided that the Saints would once again have to rebuild, which also didn't go exactly as planned. So put on your fleur-de-lis and chug down the rest of that purple energy drink as I answer the question, what happened to Saints Row 2022?
This game ain't gonna play itself.
On the surface, the life cycle of this project wasn't much different from a dozen other AAA games. It was announced to be in development in 2019, officially unveiled in 2021, and after a few delays, which is of course common nowadays, released in August of 2022. Of course, the critical reception to Saints Row was something entirely different, but we'll get to that a little later on. The important part of this story is the on the surface bit, because the development of Saints Row was anything but a bump-free ride. A big thanks for this episode goes out to a former Volition employee who was there during the bulk of Saints Row's development, who reached out to me anonymously to share what went into the design process and how it eventually resulted in the finished product. The first of their many insights was the fact that although it was first announced to exist in 2019, its development traces back far, far earlier. The original pitch way back in late 2017 was that it was going to be a Saints Row sequel/reboot, but based on the ending of SR4. It was going to have the same characters from SR4. Yes, Johnny Gat was planned, and it was going to involve the players rebuilding their gang empire back up from scratch since they were in some weird dimension/the past based on the ending of SR4. There were legs to this idea, but it was never solidified. There was then a change in idea and scope at some point to just do a full reboot, because then it would open up more story ideas, and it was seen that a fresh reboot with callbacks instead of rehashing ideas would get more people into Saints Row. Honestly, that's a fair direction to go in, as it would open up new avenues, as well as give the group of creatives who had been working with the same universe for over a decade a reason to get excited again. According to my source, the higher-ups at both Volition and their parent company, Deep Silver, all signed off on this full reboot idea, but once things started speeding up into full production, they rapidly began slowing down. The writing and design teams started to clash with upper management as to how to differentiate this new group of Saints from the old ones. They didn't want to rehash the same concept of legit gangsters who then sell out to become superheroes and/or celebrities all over again, but at the same time, they couldn't seem to nail down an alternative direction that everyone was happy with either. The writing team simply kept changing direction. It was supposed to be a simple story of how some millennial-aged adults just got into crime to pay the bills. Somehow, more pathos was added to the characters, but it was taking a long time to flesh them out. There was a lot of adjustment on the fly to simply make the story work and still make sense. Hell, whole previously unplanned missions were added into the production cycle of the game just to make the characters make more sense and hope the player would care about them more. Not sure if this worked. Some people liked the characters, but others didn't. And that's one of the potential pitfalls of doing a full reboot of an entire universe. It leaves behind years and years of character development and familiarity of which many Saints Row fans still had.
Yep.
Exacerbating the problem was the fact that Volition wanted to bring things back to the stripped-down gangster warfare and petty crimes of the first two games, but to also simultaneously offer the same over-the-top situations and set pieces from Saints Row the Third and onwards. So, Volition were essentially writing themselves into a corner. How do you just suddenly create brand new personalities that can compare with an entire decade's worth of memorable moments, character growth, and emotional payoffs? Well, as we'll see, in this case at least, you really can't. As previously stated, the constant rewriting of the cast and the general story regularly brought progress to a screeching halt more than a few times. How many times exactly? Well, my source gave me an estimate of 3 to 4, which would have been okay during a pre-production period, but this was when things were getting into full swing, and every time it happened, Saints Row was pushed back several months. This held especially true for the big opening set-piece level, which was completely scrapped and restarted from top to bottom just as many times. What also didn't help matters, which was confirmed by the source that I spoke to, was a little something called the COVID-19 pandemic, which slowed down the slow work even slowlier. So, by August of 2021, it was apparent to everyone at Volition and Deep Silver that the game was still a far ways off, as they had originally intended to ship by late 2020. While Santo Ileso, the new city, was playable, the game wasn't even close to completable. As my anonymous source claimed, this was the roughest period of the game's lifecycle. No one in the studio at that time could complete the game from start to finish. It was simply too buggy. There was a mandate sent from the top that we had to fix critical areas to at least be able to make it to the end of the game without it crashing. This mandate caused crunch, lots of it. QA was crunching 50 to 60 hours a week minimum. All other departments were putting in 12-hour days, some longer. The crunch and lack of idea cohesion caused a lot of people to lose faith in the project, and the studio began bleeding people at a constant rate. 2 to 3 people would leave a week at its worst point. Obviously, with every person that left, massive swaths of institutional knowledge left with them. The teams would then have to crunch more to pick up the slack. Special shout out to the animation, cinematics, and character creation team. They were severely understaffed and unsupported for long stretches of the project. I can't put into words how devastating that type of environment would be for a big AAA open world game that had to ship on 5 different formats. 6 if you count the Stadia version, which I don't imagine many people do, but still. What made all of this worse is that in addition to the vibes being at an all-time low within the walls of Volition, when Saints Row debuted at Gamescom 2021, the reaction from a large contingent of fans, at least, was not positive. That shouldn't be a huge surprise though, because up until that point, publicly, all that had been said was that a new Saints Row was under development, and that was it. So when it was revealed it was a full franchise reboot with none of the older fan favorite characters, well, the internet's gonna internet.
Yep.
Still though, all Volition could do was move forward with this new direction, understaffed
Shit
and
was terrible.
overworked, which
Why
is
the fuck would you
precisely when more bad
make the
news came
game
their
like
way,
this?
as is so often the case. My source confirmed that higher-up producers at Volition relayed to the general staff that Deep Silver had decided to tie end-of-project bonuses to a very high Metacritic average, a practice that's more than a decade old and unfortunately still in use today. If you don't mind doing a little homework, do look up the absolute shit show between Bethesda and Obsidian regarding a similar situation over Fallout New Vegas, which is somehow even more depressing than this one. When this news was delivered, staff were understandably upset, and while my source didn't feel comfortable citing the exact number, they did state it was high enough that pretty much everyone at Volition knew it was going to be impossible to hit. Even the best games with the smoothest development life cycles can still struggle to hit a arbitrary review average because there just might be 2 to 3 review outlets who simply might not dig every design element or storyline choice that was made. So, to then tie life-changing money that the hardworking staff might need for themselves or their family to a random number seems both incredibly outdated and out of touch. In this case, instead of it being a motivator, it was more of a cruel carrot on a string that would always remain out of reach. What followed was even more resignations, as some felt it was better to roll the dice on a new project somewhere else rather than inevitably fail to achieve a specific score that some executive thought of on a whim. Of course, despite all this turmoil, Deep Silver and Volition had to toe the company line, stating they were 100% confident in their product and the direction they were taking it, but still calmly had to announce a sizable delay of a full 6 months, moving from February to August. To most, this might have appeared to be the standard AAA MO, as it's hard to think of a major game that didn't have at least one delay. But the anonymous former staffer I spoke to said this delay was more of a Hail Mary desperation move. The second delay the public saw, pushing the game from February to August, was because so many people had left the studio that finishing the game on time was simply not going to happen. Frankly, and like most games, it's a small miracle it got out of the door at all. When I asked my source how Deep Silver / their parent company, the Embracer Group, were handling all of this, well, they said that they have their own unique issues. Deep Silver, as a publisher, should really stick to publishing mid to lower budget games. I really do not say that as an insult or negative, but they really struggle to effectively publish and market larger games. For proof of this, go watch the reveal for Saints Row 2022 on Deep Silver's channel, if it's still up. It was absolutely plagued with issues. Also, after the reveal, the links to pre-order the games for the US market did not work for days. Regardless of your thoughts on pre-ordering games, properly marketing them means giving the consumer the option to purchase it the moment it's announced. Oof, so when Saints Row did launch on the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, and PC, what? Oh, hi, little Stadia. Oh, did you say something? Oh, yeah, you're right, I forgot. It did come out on U2. Anyway, the game very much had a it barely got out the door vibe to it. Many users reported broken co-op functionality, criticized the graphics, the uneven writing, and a story that really didn't know what it wanted to be. And of course, lots and lots and lots and lots of bugs. So yeah, the game's Metacritic score in fact did not get close to the bar Deep Silver had set for it. Now, I know we don't know the exact bar, but I mean, it's safe to assume it missed it. Regardless, it did fare better commercially though, becoming the second best-selling game across all formats for that August, and with only 1 week in which to do so. Although, it should be noted it dropped down to 7th the following month, and was squeezed between 2 new entries, TMNT Cowabunga Collection, and that JoJo game with the bad netcode. While I still can't find hard lifetime numbers for Saints Row, the general sentiment coming from the Embracer Group was that it didn't hit the sales targets they were expecting. This was disappointing because since the game started development in 2017 and lasted for a further 5 years, estimates for its overall price tag are in the $100 million range, which was no doubt inflated by the repeated delays and the scrapping and redoing of a lot of work. Volition supported Saints Row with various patches post-launch, with the first major one having over 200 individual bug fixes. But once things got into a more stable state, they started rolling out various expansions and DLC, with the latest one having just come out, as was the style at the now. But unlike, say, No Man's Sky or even Cyberpunk 2077, Saints Row never seemed to get that big perception-changing momentum shift that those games enjoyed. But then again, it didn't even get that chance. As most of you already know, only 2 weeks ago, the Embracer Group announced they were closing Volition after 30 years in the business, which was no doubt entirely due to Saints Row's failure, which is something I would be saying to you if that was the whole truth, because it's not. For those that have had their ear to the ground over the last few months, Embracer has made far worse business blunders than rushing Saints Row out the door when it clearly wasn't ready. Back in May of this year, they announced in an investor's livestream earnings call that a mysterious, transformative partnership that was worth $2 billion, that's billion with a B, had fallen apart at the very last second, a business deal that the mega conglomerate had been hedging a lot of their bets on. Why? Well, while they were busy purchasing THQ Nordic, Saber Interactive, Gearbox, Crystal Dynamics, both of Square Enix's Montreal-based studios, and of course Deep Silver, they failed to realize how much it would cost to fund all of these studios at once. So, to help with that, they were looking for that $2 billion investment which would keep everything running smoothly. But when that deal completely fell through, someone had to pay the price, which of course were random employees. Just this past June, it was announced that potentially thousands of jobs were going to be made redundant across the entire Embracer umbrella, with the first being the new startup company Campfire Cabal, which was closed before they had ever even shipped their first game. Former Gearbox employees have also publicly stated they were part of a sudden wave of firings, but the exact details and the number of those affected have not yet been publicly revealed. Then, of course, there was Volition, the latest on the cost-cutting chopping block. The combination of the overhead of running a studio with 200 plus staff, and of course the $100 million spent on Saints Row, was deemed fat that could be cut away by the Embracer top brass. They unfortunately don't seem to be interested in selling the studio to another publisher either, at least not as of this writing, which means it's even more depressing that a studio of this caliber and notoriety is being completely snuffed out. While most know them as the Saints Row developers, they had a rich history dating all the way back to 1993, making one of the first fully 3D FPS games in Descent, then moving on to the Summoner, Free Space, and Red Faction franchises, before arguably peaking with my beloved Punisher.
How many people have you killed in the last few weeks?
Not sure. There were a lot of explosions.
While mistakes were absolutely made with Saints Row, the fact that Volition has had less than a year to reiterate and polish it, and have now been denied that ability to do so further, due in part to a failed business deal they had nothing to do with, is, I don't know, really shitty. This is a sentiment my anonymous source also agreed with. I do want to say that everyone I worked with at Volition was amazing. They really were a talented and dedicated group of people that really did want to make the best game they could. I assure you, no one was there just to collect a check. Everyone was giving it their best. And that's basically where we are now. While it's unclear if another publisher might swoop in at the 11th hour and save the studio,
Please
at the very least, we can hope that one day some of Volition's key employees might reconnect, get together, and decide to build their empire from the ground up once again. And to answer the eternal question, which to eliminate, world hunger or cancer? If you know of any other over-the-top odysseys in the video game or film industries, do let me know in the comments section below or on any of the social medias you see on your screen. See you next time, Saints, and thanks for watching.
Hey, look, man. Sometimes it's best to let things go. And Saints Row is something that just needs to be let go. They tried to bring it back. They did a terrible fucking job. The game was shit. It was buggy. It was glitched. It wasn't the same. It didn't come from the same place where they should have brought it to. They should have just stuck to the original formula, which was make it about a gang, not some college students trying to pay off debt. Nobody gives a fuck about that. If you was going to make it something like that, you could have easily just tapped into the urban thing. Most people join gangs and start taking over territories because they don't have nothing else. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the typical black story in the hood. You could have literally just went with the simplicity. But nah, let's try to make the game look like Fortnite to appeal to a younger audience. And it fucking failed. I hope that nobody tries to buy Volition. I hope nobody tries to bring Saints Row back. Let it die. You fucked it up. The franchise is pretty much dead. Its integrity is ruined. We don't need another Saints Row. It's dead. We got Grand Theft Auto. That's good enough for me. But anyways, though, that's just going to about do it for this one. Let me know what y'all think down in the comment section below. I'll get back to you. Till then, peace out.